We are live. Welcome. Today on, what's the name of this podcast again? Today on Above Our Pay Grade, we have Daniel Jackson, long time collaborator, but anyway, he's here in the studio today. I don't know if I explained the concept of the podcast, but basically it's deep conversations with normal people, hence the title Above Our Pay Grade. Start us off. What do you got for me? What do you got? Egypt.
You read my mind.
Really?
Well, I was thinking, what are the interesting topics of today? At least the headlines. They found a lost city in Egypt.
Which they've called Arton. Which I find fascinating in itself. But what exactly is the deal with this city that they found?
I think you know a bit more about than me already.
I just read the article about it, and I've forgotten already.
Yeah, and I just saw pictures, lovely pictures on the television. Heard that it was called Arton. Thought it looked very impressive, and it does seem very strange that they seem to have known about this place, but they didn't know where it was, and they found it.
Yeah, so from what I read, they were looking for a mortuary temple, and then they discovered this entire city by accident. A city that was, they're calling it an Egyptian Pompeii, in that it's very similar to Pompeii, in that it's a city that was buried and left intact as if the inhabitants had just left it. But I didn't see anything detailing what exactly had happened. Had you seen anything? You did. I think you were joking that it was a dust storm, but
I was joking. I don't know, these things, you do find, you find it in the modern day, ghost towns, where, perhaps in America and other places where there's been a mining town, and then for economic reasons, the reason for the town's existence disappears, and so do the people. They go somewhere else, and the town's still there.
the town remains. But I would imagine those places, they take their possessions there. It's not as if one day the inhabitants just decide to up and leave.
No.
I don't know if with this town they've just discovered in Egypt, if there were bodies found as well. I didn't see any mention of bodies.
No. Yeah, if there were bodies, they're probably just they're just going to be there from normal burials or something. The record would probably show if there was something as cataclysmic as an eruption, like with Pompeii. I think it's probably some fairly banal reason that everyone left, but it seems odd that they knew about it but didn't know where it was anymore. Strange.
Yeah, I guess it's that part of the world. I remember when the Greeks had the Olympics in 2004, leading up to as they were preparing Athens for the games. Every time they started a new dig to build infrastructure for the games, they would find temples and relics, and I guess that's just a. We're gonna pause. Egypt. How familiar are you with the Sphinx?
I've never met him, but
Do you know where I'm going with this?
is it going to be about the nose?
No.
Oh, I know a bit about the nose.
Yeah, Napoleon shut it off, didn't he?
No.
Could you elaborate on that? Do you know anything about Napoleon?
I know a bit about Napoleon.
So the story goes that Napoleon didn't like the nose on the Sphinx, and he shot it off. He had it shot off by his militiamen, his military men. Because that's the thing.
I mean, like, that would be kind of odd and, like, another strange thing to say about Napoleon's interesting character, but, I mean, from, like, the only thing that I've heard is that they were just vandals, and, you know, he didn't have any opinion about the nose. He probably liked it, even, but, you know, his soldiers just, you know, taking pot shots or something. But this was a lie, you know, just one of those repeated things that my English teacher told us, because he was bigoted against the French.
Charlton Heston?
Mr. Charlton.
Mr. Charlton Heston.
Mr. Heston Charlton.
Mr. Heston Charlton. There seems to be a lot of mythology about Napoleon. I mean, what's the reason for that?
He was a larger-than-life figure.
I heard he was quite short.
He was average height for the time.
But yeah, like that's one of these tropes about Napoleon. You got, you know, the term Napoleon complex about, you know, regarding short men who have an inferiority complex. And
yeah, part of it also stems from some of the political cartoons of the time.
So like British propaganda.
Yeah, British political propaganda cartoons where they depicted him as a very small man, you know, trying to take over the world. Yeah, and he was trying to take over the world to an extent. I mean, this is unrelated to his height. Well, the British did.
Yeah.
Napoleon was one of his idols was Alexander the Great, who conquered basically, you know, the known world, but he didn't have ambitions to. I mean, I can't speak about Alexander the Great with any real knowledge, but Napoleon, he really. It's not like he wasn't a Vladimir Lenin who wanted to actually take the globe with his brand of politics and, you know, political and economic systems and things. I think he just got carried away. But you know, he also just some of the time was just responding to aggression from other nations. So like his motives for different campaigns and things have varied. I'll tell you an interesting fact is that what year, we know that he was, you know, emperor from 1802 till his defeat in 1815, but when did he leave the army? When do you think he stopped being?
I have no idea. I know he was exiled at some point.
Yeah, well, anyway, he became first consul in 1799, and basically the law at the time meant that he couldn't also be in the military, so he left the army. So he acted as a general for the rest of his career to 1815, but he wasn't actually in the military officially.
So what was he then when he was taking over the world, or trying to, like, what was his official title?
Well, he was first consul from 1799 until he managed to get himself crowned. He decided, I'll consolidate my power and declare myself emperor of the French. And, you know, the concept of like nationality at the time was such that, you know, whatever conquered territories and puppet states came under the influence of France were kind of like he was emperor of them too. So it's an interesting thing about nationality, like even up to the First World War, which I also know a bit about.
That's a whole other episode on its own.
A lot of people who were French did not speak French. They spoke other languages in the south of France and in Brittany and places like that. So you'd have troops coming up to the front from Marseille and stuff like that in the south of France, and they didn't know the language that was spoken in Paris. So I guess they just, I mean, a lot of things were like that. Alistair MacLean, the famous English author, he didn't grow up speaking English. He spoke Gaelic, the Scottish variety of Gaelic. I guess you could call it Scottish. Like, the Irish Gaelic is just called Irish now.
Well, the thing with languages is how quickly they change as well. I've heard that people from Quebec, they speak like Quebecese French, and they're almost
Quebecois.
Quebecois. That sounds right. Quebecois. They speak Quebecois, but they're almost unintelligible to like modern Parisian French speakers. Yeah.
Actually, that might just be the adjective for the people. I mean, I don't know if they refer to the language, the variety. Is that? Yeah, they sound a bit weird to someone who studies Parisian French. What's considered standard French.
Which again just became it. That was like the default. Like you said, there were dialects being spoken in the south.
Still, I mean, you got
yes.
Catalan is spoken near the Pyrenees and in on both sides of the Pyrenees and the other Languedoc in the south. So these are other languages down there, and some that sound a lot like Italian actually when they're closer to the border with Italy.
Yeah, which would make sense. I mean, it's funny how geography manages to shape language, because they're all descended, they're called Romance languages. They're all descended from some form of Latin, I suppose, or ancient Italian, if you want. Back to Egypt quickly. I want to circle back to Egypt.
Yeah, getting a bit like just.
That's fine. That's fine.
We all over the place.
No, that's what we want. We want to. There's no. My battery's running low. Back to Egypt. Yeah. I wanted to bring up the Sphinx.
Yeah.
That's how we got sidetracked. See, it's fine. It's organic. So there's a theory that the Sphinx is much, much older than we're led on to believe. There's some work done by a American geologist by the name of Robert Schoch and the now deceased John Anthony West, who was an Egyptologist. And their theory was that due to water erosion that had formed on the sides of the Sphinx, that it had to be at least 10,000 years old, if not older. Now it's believed that the Sphinx is a contemporary of the pyramids, and the pyramids at Giza are meant to be no older than 4,000 years old, something like that. What are your thoughts on the possibility of an even ancienter Egypt?
without knowing a lot about these civilizations. Hmm. It's
Well, let me put this.
this is like an area of the world where they say this is like North Africa near they say around Mesopotamia, aka Iraq, and that sort of area is like the cradle of civilization, and the Nile being a very very nice place to live when you can farm there and it's very green and all that. Obviously, like they were doing very well 4,000 years ago. There's no reason they couldn't do well a lot longer before. It's a shame that not so many written records. When you'd hope that people around the time of the pyramids, as you say, maybe 4,000 years ago, didn't say, "Well, we're building the pyramids now, but someone else built that thing. We don't know what that is. That's about."
Well, that's the thing with the pyramids. I mean, there are no written records about who built the pyramids, when they were built. There's no internal hieroglyphics within the pyramids themselves, apart from one tiny little inscription in a hidden chamber that allegedly attributes the Grand Pyramid to King Khufu. But it's a very controversial opinion, this idea that the Sphinx is older than it's meant to be. Like it's not talked about in polite archaeological circles. And this theory came out, I think, in the late 80s, early 90s, and was pretty much dismissed out of hand. No one wanted to entertain it, despite sound geological evidence. Like Robert Schoch, the geologist, I think he's a PhD. He's head of the geology department. Sorry, in I want to say Harvard, but I know that's wrong. But it's some esteemed university in the States. He's not some snake oil salesman.
I wonder how their sort of suggestions are framed. Are they saying, look, this is suggestive of?
Yeah, it's speculation.
Yeah. And would they go over perhaps a few interpretations of what they've
I mean, it's been a while since I looked into it. And like Robert Schoch himself, he was putting a lot on the line by coming out and making these claims, because it is so controversial. And when he came out with that, like, it was still assumed that like the Sumerians were the oldest civilization on Earth, and they only date back something like to 6,000 BC, I think. So saying that the Sphinx itself predates the Sumerians by like 4,000 years, or a couple of thousand years, was just absurd at the time. And it wasn't until I think early 2000 or the late 90s when a farmer in the south of Turkey, just not too far from the border with Syria, he was trying to remove this boulder from his farm, and it turned out it was actually part of this huge megalithic structure that's called Göbekli Tepe. Not sure if you've heard of that one. Yeah. And so that's dated to be like 10,000 years old, or 10,000 BC, I should say. It's like 12,000 years old. And it's huge. It's like, bigger than Stonehenge. They're still excavating it to this day. These huge rock pillars with sort of animalistic engravings on them, and they don't know They don't know who built it because there wasn't meant to be anyone living there at the time. There weren't any. There's no recorded civilizations that are that old, and the common. What happened there? I wonder how long that was like that for.
A few minutes, I guess. Right. I didn't see it.
The common consensus was that any humans living that long ago were all hunter gatherers. There weren't any civilized. There weren't any civilizations.
Yeah, I think that when like these, if you can call it like a dogma, comes about, like they can last a very long time in the face of contradicting evidence. For example, it took a long time for people to realize that some Aboriginal Australians weren't just living a nomadic lifestyle. They set up fish traps and things, like actual settlement on a river, and this is just anathema to everything not anathema, but the prevailing thing was that this is very simple. They're hunter gatherers. They stayed in a place and then moved to another place and then maybe came back to that place later, and that's all of the tribes across a whole continent. And then they find evidence that no, people did create settlements and things like that, and it's just after decades of thinking of all the tribes of a continent as being like having exactly the same lifestyle, seems actually a bit unlikely that they would all still do the same thing over thousands of years and not innovate in some way.
Well, I mean, their languages certainly aren't compatible.
No, there are hundreds of languages.
Yeah.
And there's all distinct people, lots of similarities, lots of generalizations you can make, but all these cultures are different, and of course Aboriginal people are very proud to go under the one banner these days, and they're not going to start saying, oh no, I'm not part of that tribe. Some other Aboriginal group speaking another language. They tend not to do that these days because they're a minority now in the modern world. So it sort of makes sense to not the differences between them and people of other genetic backgrounds is such that, well, what are the differences between us? And now I'm just speaking for Aboriginal people, which seems inappropriate.
Look at this white fella talking about Aboriginal people. Cancelled. But on
how did I get into that? Something about dogmas and things. Yeah, like just prevailing ideas of entire cultures and that sort of thing. In the face of evidence. But that's the weird thing about archaeology, is that you often don't get any hard explanations, any clear ideas. Was it on like Easter Island? They've got like these big
the heads, yeah.
Yeah, they got the heads, and I think it's Easter Island. But they, apart from the heads, they've got these just sort of basin things, big stone basins, and they don't know what they were for, and we'll never know. Like, were they for like votive tribute things? religious things, or they had some practical purpose. Who knows? Like, you could just speculate, but like, no written records, and you can't talk to the dead. You can try.
Well, there are rituals that you can perform.
I think we should do that on the next podcast.
I think we should have a black mass and try and find out what those Easter Islanders are up to. Absolutely. Amongst other things.
I think a simple Ouija board.
Yeah.
Might be able to come. The problem is that, I mean, I don't know if they would use our alphabet. It might be a protocol problem there.
I wonder if there are any dyslexic ghosts. I was reading about David Bowie today, and in the 70s he was super into the occult, as well as cocaine. Cocaine and the occult go together like ham and cheese. Apparently he, at one point, was convinced that his house, or more specifically the pool in his house, was possessed by the devil, or was acting as a dimensional portal for demonic forces to come through. And so he
was it rude? Was he right? Or?
Well, I think he was, yeah. So he hired this witch, this white witch, I can't remember her name, to come and perform some kind of like cleansing ceremony. And they like bought all these like books, occult books, and some talismans, and it was like the witch, David Bowie, I think the bassist from Deep Purple, Glenn Hughes, was there. And David Bowie's wife, Angie Bowie. And yeah, they start like performing these incantations and doing this ritual, and the pool like starts to bubble, and then like this dark like shadowy figure appears at the bottom of the pool, and it stayed there. It stayed there for like weeks and weeks. They painted over it, and it would just keep coming back, and eventually they sold the house and left. And then, yeah, so I was like getting into like this David Bowie rabbit hole. And I found this video, which I think I should show you, and we can have it. I guess we can have it playing when I do the edit, so the folks at home can see it. Yeah, I was going down this David Bowie rabbit hole, just about all different weird occult stuff that he was into, and then someone posted in the Reddit thread I was on. They're like, "Oh, you should check out the Jack Stephen video." I'm like, "Oh, was it Jack Stephen?" You won't know. God, now I'm gonna find it. A lot of pressure.
Stephen Jack.
Yeah, something like that. Stephen Jack Stephen. Heston Charlton. Yeah, Jack Stephen on David Bowie. So this was the day Bowie died. And they had this guy on Sky News.
Let's bring in Jack Stephen. He is director of Fortune Music.
It's actually Fortress Music.
Fortress Music.
Yeah.
I beg your pardon, Jack. Fortress Music, and works in the music industry.
Does he look familiar at all to you?
That's Bowie.
It's Bowie! Right?
What the hell?
So, like, I had no idea what this video was going to be. It just said, "Oh, you should watch the Jack Stephen video." And I'm like, who the fuck's Jack Stephen? And I click it up, and like you, I just go, yeah, that's Bowie. This is the day he died, right?
Yeah.
And the stuff this guy's saying, he's just like, yeah, I felt like a part of me died, and you gotta watch it, like, on your own time. It goes for, like, 10 minutes. Like, they even covered up his ears, because, like, the ears are, like, a great telltale sign. Like, everyone has very distinct ears.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's fucking Bowie!
Let's hear his voice for a second.
First complete artist, where he was involved in every single area of his career, whether it's photography, fashion, whether it was film, whether it was poetry.
He sounds like him.
He sounds like him. He looks like him.
Where he was very theatrical.
I mean, I'm gonna mute that now because we're gonna get some echo. Yeah, I had no idea what I was about to watch, and I put that on. I'm like, that's David Bowie. How do you explain that? Because as far as I can tell, it's real. And there was like I've tried to like do some basic research on this Jack Stephen. Typed in his name, and like the third, well, there's some AFL player called Jack Stephen. So like that's half of the stuff that comes up. So I had to like refine it to like Jack Stephen, David Bowie.
You can get a dash AFL and we'll remove any site.
Right. Need to do that. But some like random Reddit thread came up, and it was like this guy has like chronicled Jack Stephen's life from like his birth right up to the present day. But there's no sources. It's just like he did this and he did that, and he was like manager for the Eurythmics or something. All this stuff, but like, there's no sources. And like this thread has like no upvotes, and it has like 2 comments on it, which is very strange for a Reddit thread. I'm not even sure how it, like Google returned a result for it.
Is this guy? He's like Bad Cooper in Twin Peaks. Twin Peaks season, he's a doppelganger.
So Twin Peaks is all about doppelgangers, and Bowie was in Twin Peaks.
Yes.
And ooh, I'm getting shivers now. Yeah, there's some other YouTube channel that I just discovered where this guy's all about doppelgangers, and I think I texted you the other day saying Winston Churchill was actually Aleister Crowley or something like that.
Something like that.
This guy's insane. He's like some of the things he's on about, like he's obviously, you know, off his meds, but yeah, there's like a whole thing about doppelgangers at the moment, or not at the moment, but that I've become aware of, and then this video today just fucking blew my mind. Because, I mean, it may very well be a real person called Jack Stephen, but he just looks and sounds exactly like Bowie. And one of the strangest things is neither of these presenters mention anything about him like being a fucking doppelganger of David Bowie. Like you straight away said that's Bowie before you even knew really what anything of it, like what it was about. Like neither of them say, oh, you actually bear a striking resemblance to David Bowie.
Yeah, I wonder whether that's a bit of English reserve, you know, and they're thinking, well, what's appropriate to say on the day that such a revered person has died, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, quite possibly. But I do think it's interesting that that Bowie was in Twin Peaks, and one of the central themes of Twin Peaks is the idea of doppelgangers. And then I don't know if you've seen the video for Black Star and the other video from that album for the song Lazarus.
I've seen neither video, no. I listened to the album a lot, but...
Yeah. So I'm sure you know who Lazarus was from the Bible. But yeah, those videos are just like full of esoteric symbolism, and like you can break it down and interpret it in various ways. Yeah, I don't like. Do you know much about sort of Aleister Crowley, the occult, black magic, white magic?
Not heaps. I read generally about him a long time ago.
Crowley.
Crowley.
Or Crowley?
Crowley, actually, yeah.
We went to school with the Crowley, so...
Yeah, and then there's, like, you know, a great Ozzy Osbourne song called Mr. Crowley.
Is that not about Aleister?
It is about Aleister Crowley.
So he was getting it wrong.
He was pronouncing it how he wanted to pronounce it. He's from Birmingham. You know.
Oh, fucking say how I want to say it, Sharon!
You know, they say everything a bit different in Birmingham.
Yeah, fair enough. So sorry, you knew a bit, you read a bit about Crowley.
A long time ago, I think he... am I correct in saying... Did he... No, he didn't turn up in the Twin Peaks tie-in books by Mark Frost. Or did he? I think...
I'm not sure. I have not read any of those.
Because I read both of them, and there were esoteric sort of things. UFO related stuff. Uh, I think there might have been something related to Bowie, or not Bowie, Crowley, and at least there were. Let's go back.
Yeah. I think
If you Google Twin Peaks
I just did quickly.
Crowley, see if anything comes up, because I mean he might.
Well, he's got a entry on the Twin Peaks wiki,
Right, so maybe.
but nothing specific about. I'm just quickly passing through it. Appearances: The Secret History of Twin Peaks.
Yes, he was in it.
So that's the Mark Frost book, is it?
Yeah, there's two. There's the Secret History of Twin Peaks was the first one, which came out, I guess, as like before or like around when the series started airing, in 2017, and then the other one came out. It's called The Final Dossier. I think so. After it had aired. It's a bit shorter. They're both good. They're both just intriguing sorts of things. Lots of very epistolary, lots of memos and just letters and
So what's
reports and things.
Sorry to cut you off, but what's Mark Frost's background? Is he British, English, from memory?
I don't know. I've never seen him interviewed or anything.
What's he done beyond Twin Peaks?
And
how has he come into the
I
whole
always
thing?
assumed he was American.
Yeah, I don't know why I thought he was British. I think I read that recently. Yeah, I mean, I wonder how he ended up working with not Forrest. Yeah, I wonder how he ended up with David Lynch, yeah. He's just best known as the co-creator of Twin Peaks.
Yeah, I'm not sure, because he wasn't involved in any previous David Lynch stuff. Unlike many of the cast of
yeah, exactly.
The cast of Twin Peaks are very much like, the Log Lady was like, one of his set designers and stuff.
Yeah. Jack Nance is in The Razorhead. Carl McLaughlin was in June and Blue Velvet.
And Jack Nance is in Blue Velvet.
And Jack Nance is in everything that David Lynch does.
Yeah.
I'd have to look into Mark Frost a bit more to see where he comes in. And I wonder if the sort of more occult things...
Was he American?
He was American, yeah. I'm not sure why I thought he was British.
Well,
Is. Yeah, he's still alive. Don't curse him. Although, no, he's not that old. He's 1953. He's only 67. Only.
Yeah.
Yeah, like just circling back to the occult, it is fascinating, because I think we dismiss it so readily as hoo-ha, as a gimmick, or not real, essentially. And I don't know, there could be something there,
It depends on what you want to talk about as real. Because,
right,
like, yeah, just in the sense that, like, when people want to talk about scientific reality, well, of course, there's no evidence of any of the, claims of occultists and stuff like that. But, if someone has constructed all their belief system around that, just like a lot of religions, that becomes their personal reality. And if these things involve what would be considered supernatural, but may well be drug induced or some part of some kind of hysteria or hypnosis, all sorts of things that can happen to them, to the mind, or within happen in the mind. We're all looking at the world through various lenses, and so you can't anything that is once deemed supernatural but then becomes explained by the scientific methods is no longer supernatural anymore. So by definition, supernatural means unreal because it's not natural. It's not part of the natural world. So it's things that are unexplained or unexplainable by science, but it doesn't necessarily I think that being explainable by science does not equal the only kind of reality, just because we don't know everything yet.
Yeah, it's I think extremely presumptuous on the behalf of science as a discipline to assume that the material world as we know it is the only reality that's possible, and then there's nothing beyond the material, and that we've basically we've understood all reality as it is. Because that's kind of where we are scientifically.
I think, I think that we probably shouldn't believe in things that we shouldn't. We shouldn't believe in things that are beyond the material, because that's kind of what, like, why would you can't there's no reason to, but it's not to say that things that we haven't explained yet, just because we haven't explained them yet, are not real, and they might be explained in some weird way in which we don't yet know the brain, or things like that.
Yeah, well, it's like that Arthur C. Clarke quote about any sufficiently advanced technology would appear to us as magic.
I was just thinking about that one as well.
Yeah. And I think it's an interesting point because, like you're saying, why would we believe in anything beyond the material? And, that's a fair point, because as someone who wants to be grounded in the scientific method and empirical reality.
The thing is that it sort of has it sort of portrays an attitude that the material is somehow boring, but everything about the world is very, very strange, and we need to step back more often than we do, because we evolutionarily I use such a long word, but through evolution we can't be in constant awe and wonderment about the things around us, because we wouldn't function. And so that's just how we work, that we have a filter. We filter out a lot of the
noise.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about a signal to noise ratio and things like that, you consider it noise because it's distracting from something you have to do. I have to catch this fish in order to eat and survive.
Yeah, if every time you left the cave you were
having a trip, basically.
Yeah, by the beauty of nature, or the the beauty in the sky, or something like that.
Yeah, you wouldn't survive.
Right. I mean, something that my mind always circles back to is we have this scientific absolutism in that 14 billion years ago there was a infinitely dense singularity that started to expand and, you know, became the universe. And that's just accepted more or less by most scientists, regardless of discipline. You know, like if you're, I guess, if you're a person of science, you just have to believe in the Big Bang Theory.
You have to trust the best. The people who have looked at the evidence and thought about it the most, you have to trust experts on these things.
Trust the science.
Well, that's not a phrase that I like.
No, because, I mean, first of all, like, the Big Bang Theory is just as useless as in the beginning there was God, or there was there was void, and it doesn't explain the nature of reality. It doesn't explain why. Like, there shouldn't be reality to begin with. It doesn't make any sense.
All it does is grab what we can observe and come up with a story that makes sense of what we can observe.
Which is what humans have always done. They've always taken whatever context they've had at the time and come up with some kind of narrative that fits what they can observe around them. You know, so originally, you know, the Old Testament attributes the whole idea of God is really just like is the wind, is this invisible presence, Elohim or El, which refers to wind, to the breath of life, because that was all that they could see and experience. You know, they didn't know anything beyond that.
That's true.
And then we become more advanced, and we can point telescopes into space, and, you know, have radio dishes that pick up cosmic background radiation.
You know what? If we're gonna say like that, there's some sort of equivalence between the a cosmology of the Israelites or whatever. And look at their idea of the universe and the current day understanding of the universe. Ours is better. It's just simply better because we can see more, we know more.
Oh, no doubt. I'm not trying to say that.
But it is a good point that like on the available, observations that was available to them, they couldn't formulate many theories and
yeah.
Ha-
I guess what I'm trying to get to is I think we're at a similar turning point or a similar cultural point in our understanding of the nature of reality. In that, God, we're getting into the weeds now. You know, there's a depth to reality, and you start getting into things like quantum physics and quantum mechanics, quantum entanglement. You know, where observation is directly impacting the outcome of experiments. Quantum entanglement, where two atoms can become entangled no matter how far apart they are within the universe. One will affect the other simultaneously, so that violates speed of light rules, all these kinds of things that shouldn't be possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's all very strange, and some of those things, like, as you say, was it spooky action at a distance or something? Is that the phrase? It's sort of famous phrase.
Possibly, yeah.
But so some of those things are like, Schrodinger's cat and all that. Like, scientists will go, that's generally what we think is the case with quantum physics. But at the same time, there's a lot of quantum physics where they're just doing a lot of mathematics and basically a heard that that some physicists, their attitude is that, like, look, don't try and understand it. Just do the mathematics.
Yeah, which, I mean, that's thinking just seems off. Don't try and understand it.
Well, it's
Like, okay, just put that in a box and put it over here and forget about it.
Yeah, well, because it's so, because some of the, the things that they conclude from working out these equations and things are so, like, alien that it's kind of like, it's like, I don't think that the concepts are, I don't know. but it is a strange area of human endeavor trying to work this stuff out when the conclusions are so strange that you don't know what it means. Like, and in the end, what are you doing? A bunch of mathematics, like, and you can't, and of course they this is not string theory, which is basically you can't actually do any experiments to prove or disprove anything. They do experiments, and they've got lots of results with quantum physics and everything. But a lot of it is just like so weird that they don't really know what it means.
Yeah, which I think is indicative of a whole other bunch of stuff going on that hasn't been considered or entertained. And tying it back to the occult and mysticism, like if we think of like magic rituals or paranormal phenomena, I mean that may just be some kind of expression of quantum weirdness that we don't really understand. The ability to put a thought out into the universe and have it manifest, synchronicity, things like that. Like that to me seems like some kind of macro version of quantum entanglement. Like if atoms have the ability to do that, to become entangled, and for these strange things to happen, then why not be possible at a larger scale? There's nothing to preclude that, and saying that quantum experiments yield weird results that are inexplicable. I mean, that's magic, isn't it? Isn't that what magic is, to some extent?
I suppose. I don't know about when you say thoughts influencing things.
Well, like a lot of like the thing that David Bowie was doing, right? Trying to close this portal or banish this spirit, or he may have brought it in, he may have conjured it in doing what he was doing, but all that was done through thought and through word. There was no machinery that they were creating to build a dimensional portal or whatever. It was all done through thought. If any of what happened in that specific anecdote has any kind of reality to it, like it was all based around thought and speech. But beyond just that anecdote, there's countless anecdotes from all cultures where thought alone manifests in reality. Like that book, The Secret, that was popular 10 or 15 years ago. I mean, that's all about placing your intention into the universe and having it manifest.
No, it's a grift.
It is a grift, but there's something to it as well.
I like that you're using the word anecdote a lot.
It's a good word.
Because scientists use it a lot because it just means that this hasn't been tested rigorously. There's anecdotal evidence, and anecdotal evidence
it's still evidence.
It's fine, but like it's usually a jumping up. It's a thing that will spur on like actual study of a phenomenon.
Yeah, and I think what we're talking about now, it's much more subtle than, like, it's not Harry Potter style magic where you say a spell and there's an immediate physical, you say Loomis and something lights up.
I think one problem though, but going just with that is like that people will make claims and sincere claims about what would be called supernatural phenomena, and then whenever they're tested,
and that was exactly my next point was, there was James Randi, the Randi Institute, and no one ever passed his rigorous test. And my defense or my explanation for that would be is that it's a subtle form of magic. It's not as direct as like a Harry Potter kind of say an incantation and there's an immediate visible phenomena. It's almost like it wants to remain hidden. Like it doesn't want to be discovered so easily, so readily. I mean, that's just some weird thing I've just thought up then. But yeah, like James Randi spent his whole career trying to, he more than anyone, I think he wanted someone to be able to,
wrong, but
because who wouldn't want to discover magic?
Surprising.
Yeah, exactly. Like that was his whole thing was, please prove that you can talk to spirits or perform telekinesis, whatever it may be. And no one could ever do it.
I'll tell you an analogous prize that I don't know if it was like some physics society, chemistry society, or just like one chemist. Basically, they said, "I'm going to offer $1 million prize for anyone who can show me a something that's chemical free, an object or something that's chemical free." Because that's a phrase that's commonly used about products,
No chemicals.
Yeah. And I thought that was funny because it's like everything is made of chemicals.
You know what's even funnier? And I don't know if you've ever heard me say it, but my own little sort of not even my own, but there's this saying that everything goes back to Egypt.
Okay.
The word chemistry comes from the ancient word for Egypt. Egypt used to be known as Kemet.
Oh.
And from Kemet you get alchemy, you get alcohol. Alchemy was the precursor to modern day chemistry.
I did not know that. I knew that all those owls, like, because during the European Middle Ages, science sort of took a back seat. I guess that's the right term. Science didn't progress very well, and part of it is Aristotle's fault because everyone just blindly believed in everything Aristotle wrote. Anyway, but during the European Middle Ages, the Arab world was flourishing with scientists and stuff. So that's where, of course, we've got alchemy,
algebra, Al Jazeera.
Yeah, they're that old. They, numerals. We call them Arabic numerals, but they actually came. The ones that we use every day, actually come from sort of India, but via,
the Phoenicians.
Well, via Arabic speaking peoples and stuff. So it's a bit of a misnomer, but they were using these very useful symbolic system when Europe is still using Roman numerals, which are just not very practical.
They're not good at all. They're terrible. No one. Yeah. Yeah, everything goes back to Egypt. In some way or another.
And yet, all roads lead to Rome.
All roads lead to Rome. I mean, even the Romans were ripping off the Greeks. And then in turn, I think the Greeks owed a lot to the Egyptians, really, in terms of their culture. I don't know.
I learned this morning that because I was reading about computer malware and such, but I was thinking about the term Trojan horse.
Mm.
I'm like, is that even in the Iliad? And it turns out it's not.
The actual phrase Trojan horse.
The episode, the whole incident.
The whole thing.
The Iliad, because you know there was the Iliad and then there's the Aeneid by Virgil.
Yeah, the
Quite
Roman version.
A lot later, but yeah.
So the Trojan horse is from the Aeneid.
The Trojan horse existed as a story because it's like it was alluded to in a Greek play, and in something else outside of Virgil. But the Iliad actually the poem ends before the war is over, and the Trojan horse basically was the ruse that actually helped the Greeks win the war and end the war. But the war didn't end before the Iliad was finished, but the Aeneid did finish the story of the war, the Trojan War, and they had that whole thing. There's a funny thing where they said that there was a Trojan priest who basically guessed their plan, the Greeks' plan to hide in the horse. But he and his sons were strangled by serpents sent by Poseidon. I thought that was hilarious.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I guess sea serpents slither it up.
Yeah. The gods had a vested interest in the Greeks.
Oh yeah, and the reason was that they had done something like pitched tents in front of his statue or something.
It was the last time they'll do that.
Anyway, this is all on Wikipedia, so I mean, if you're interested, go look that up.
Well,
speaking to camera.
Yeah, just looking at it looks like you're on the casting couch.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
Really? I'll show you a video later. On that note, let's end it there because we've done with the couple of interruptions we had. It'll be just on an hour, which I think is a good time. We've got into some cool stuff there. It's a bit weird, talking on camera, etc. I'm probably going to edit this part out anyway. But yeah, thanks for being on Above Our Pay Grade, Mr. Jackson.
Pleasure to be here.
All right.